Brought to you by Penguin.
The social distance between us. How remote politics wrecked Britain. Read by me, the author, Darren Mcgarvey. In loving memory of Anna Wilson, beloved aunt, great-aunt, great-great-aunt, and loyal friend to many. I do not think one can assess a writer's motives without knowing something of his early development. His subject matter will be determined by the age he lives in. But before he ever begins to write, he will have acquired an emotional attitude from which he will never completely escape. George Orwell, Why I Write, 1946. Introduction. Quote, "We didn't think there was going to be this lasting and permanent effect on sections of society, nor did we foresee that the benefits of the new economy were not going to be spread out properly. The widening divide between those who really thrived under the new economy and those who suffered, the gaps between the rich and the poor, which have got worse steadily through Thatcher, Major, Blair, and other governments over the last 20-odd years. We still haven't quite worked out how to address that." End quote. Kenneth Clarke, Chancellor of the Exchequer from 1993 to 1997, in the Lord Speaker lecture in 2021. Britain is in a long-distance relationship with reality. COVID-19 only brought this into sharper focus. As coronavirus ravaged the UK, stories of chaos, indecision and dysfunction at the very top of government became commonplace. While it would be deeply naive to expect a cumbersome bureaucracy such as the British government to respond to a fast-moving crisis without making some mistakes, it was in the UK that one of the world's worst pandemic responses was haphazardly mounted. One which provided a rare insight into how the machinery of the state often operates behind the curtain of public relations, and how institutional intransigence and even the slightest human error at the top of a democratic structure can adversely affect millions of lives. The Prime Minister himself initially regarded COVID as a scare story, a view quite typical of a man who has faced few impediments to his progress in life. As Italy entered the first of many brutal lockdowns, its health systems overwhelmed as the death rate spiralled out of control, Boris Johnson remained characteristically cavalier in his attitude to the threat, allegedly even offering to be injected with the virus to prove it was harmless. Within weeks he was hospitalised. As one of the Western world's most powerful leaders fell clumsily on his own sword, the profoundly grim nature of the crisis suddenly became tangible for many. A nation held its breath in collective shock as the initial novelty of life in lockdown, enabled by the illusory sense that the crisis was occurring somewhere else, wore off, replaced by uncertainty, anxiousness, and fear. This was that rare occasion where, for once, a powerful political figure was no longer insulated from the impact of their decisions, no longer spared the consequences of their own poor judgment. Nobody was safe, not even the powerful. The virus's tentacles reached deep into the heart of government, humbling, humiliating, and terrifying all who had doubted it, before wresting them from their dream world where all that had mattered was what they believed. While it's tempting, after years of grim pandemic-related news, to draw a line under everything that came before the pandemic and instead turn our eyes warily forward, there is a tremendous risk that in doing so we may leave ourselves even more vulnerable ahead of whichever crisis befalls us next. The normal to which many of us would happily return in a heartbeat was anything but. After a decade of austerity, Britain's public services lay decimated. 2 million children lived in poverty and food banks were the size of small factories.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?